Get in, weirdos. We're making fun of book banners with a special guest, Ryan Estrada.
Whenever they try to go off script and say something themselves, it's always the dumbest thing you've ever heard in your life. You're not only following the path of the dictators and cult leaders I write about, you're following the exact steps of like Syndrome from The Incredibles.
Ryan Estrada is the author of Banned Book Club, a book that I have read and reviewed and loved. He co-authored that book with his wife, Kim Hyun-suk. He's also the author of Occulted, No Rules Tonight, and the upcoming book, Good Old-Fashioned Korean Spirit. But he's also really funny. He's willing to go out of his way to talk to people who are trying to ban his books because, yes, people are trying to ban his books. I did this wonderful interview with him. He sat down with me for an hour or so, and this guy is so funny and was such a joy to work with on this. Unfortunately, because of the way that I recorded this, my audio of this interview got completely not recorded. So instead of just delivering to you the conversation that we had, I'm going to tell you about the conversation that we had and let him answer the questions that I posed. I had asked him to tell me about his experiences with book banners and having his book banned, which his book, Banned Book Club, which is, again, like just a great book, a nonfiction book about the experiences of his wife, Kim Hyun-suk, in college during South Korea's Fifth Republic, which was a military dictatorship. I specifically asked, what was the moment where you said, oh, I couldn't talk to these people who have banned my book? What was that moment like? Here's what he had to say, and he specifically references Bruce Friedman of Clay County, Florida, which was the first person who successfully got his book banned.
Thank you for having me. I'm always excited to talk about weird book banners. Yeah, I jumped fully into it when I found our book started getting banned because after having had so many experiences interviewing people who had risked their lives and risked their freedom to fight against book banning, I'm like, I want to be cool like my wife, I don't want to like just sit back. So I've gotten to know them all. I've become pen pals with everyone who's ever banned my book. I've flown out to talk at meetings and met with them in person. And there's just so much weird drama that I'm excited to talk about it. In the first place that our book was ever banned was in Clay County, Florida. There's a guy named Bruce that I know you've talked about before that pretends to be a concerned parent, but actually moved there from New York just for the specific purpose of opening this branch of a organization that bans hundreds of books per month. Mine was one of them. At that point, I was just confused because I'm like, did he read the title of the book? Does he know what it's about? It's like, it's literally about what he's doing. Does he know that? He had a website, he had an email address. So I just sent him an email and said, hey man, I'm the author of the book. Want to know if you had any questions about it, if there's any misconceptions I can explain for you. And he was immediately just like, yeah, I've never read the book. What are you talking about? Why would I read that book? And I'm like, then why did you? Initially, it was just a very brief 2-sentence email, but his response was so long that I realized every time I asked this guy a question, he would write a novel in response. And so I'm like, everything he writes is less time he has to fill out a book challenge form. So for like 2 months, I was pen pals with him until I finally was like, I can't talk to this guy anymore. I'm tired of it. But I kept him pretty busy because he would just like send me these long things, like these long monologues. And one of them even literally did the we're not so different, you and I monologue that every supervillain in a movie does. Bruce, if you ever read a book, you're not only following the path of the dictators and cult leaders I write about, you're following the exact steps of like Syndrome from The Incredibles. Like how do you think you're coming off well?
Ryan and his wife live in South Korea, and he at one point was approached about an article on this topic for the Korea Times, and they wanted to get in touch with Bruce. I think it's fascinating learning what countries outside of the US think in today's age about our book banning uptick here in the United States. Here's what he had to say about them wanting to contact Bruce.
I did an interview for the Korea Times, which is one of the biggest English language newspapers here. And I hadn't talked to Bruce in a long time, but since I was talking about our book being banned, they wanted to get a quote from Bruce. And they asked if I could point them in how to get in touch with him. And I wasn't sure about that because I'm like, it is good that, they do want to do their due diligence and have the opposing view. But this guy, his entire career is trying to make book banning sound palatable to people who are uninformed. So is he going to like bust out enough charm to like say something that's going to make someone in Korea think that he's on the right side. I did not need to worry because completely unprompted, his response was something like, and I got the full response, not just the one that was published because I was talking to the guy, but his response was basically like, it's not my fault that Korea has such a violent past and present. I just want my children to be better. And I'm like, this is being published in Korea, bud. You're like, your response is, well, Korea sucks. I want my kids to grow up in a better country. So he's not very well loved in Korea. Many places he's not very well loved, but especially Korea. That came out unprompted. It wasn't even like that was the question. And then I believe it didn't make the article, but I believe he just like insulted the journalist and told him he wasn't serious and ghosted him. You're devoting your life to something you're so not good at.
What's interesting about Bruce and Julie and all of these book banners, Julie Gebhardt's is my resident county book banner if you're new here, is they sometimes like to pretend that they're not banning books. Julie says this specifically at my children's school board, despite the fact that she used to run an Instagram account called Ban Explicit Books in Schools. My comment section also is often riddled with this idea that we're not banning books, we're just taking inappropriate books out of school libraries, which begs the question, what was inappropriate about Ban Book Club, Bruce? Bruce also does this. He also says we're not banning books, but then sometimes he does just straight up say that he's banning books. Not just the organization that he runs, which is No Left Turn in Education, but him personally. He is banning books.
Yeah, and then the other thing that he often corrects me on when I do interviews is he has to jump in and say, because I talk about his organization, No Left Turn Education, and he'll always say, No Left Turn Education has never banned a book. I have. And I'm like, okay, so the organization that you are the head and sole member of, whose entire point is to ban books, and whose name is on every single one of the forms you fill out, and your email address on that form is at No Left Turn Education. They had nothing to do with this. It's just you.
Bruce has a huge spreadsheet of every book that he hates, and Ryan and I talked about this.
Yeah, if you look at his criteria, I know you must have seen his little, because I've seen in some of your header images, you have clips from his documents, but he publicly posts it. It's this giant spreadsheet that will crash your computer if you open it because it has every thought he's ever had on any book. And it's one of my favorite things. I'll just sit there and read it for hours because I'm like, what? Because he does all these interviews where he's like, he's gonna listen, just love that we're talking about him this much, but he'll do these interviews where like, there's porn, it's all porn. And like, things are public. You're talking about like a character in the background had a little 3 pixels that might have been a pride pin. So let's just ban that.
I asked Ryan, what is your favorite challenge by Bruce Friedman? Because I've read a lot of Bruce Friedman's challenge forms, which a challenge form is the form that you fill out in order to try to get a book removed from a school library, a library, like a public library, a school district, a state, etc. They are so stupid. The challenge forms written by Bruce, they are so stupid. Here's Ryan's answer for what his favorite challenge is.
So my favorite, that people have heard me tell this many times because it's the one that like makes people get it if they don't quite get it yet. There's a book called Zen Shorts. It is a scholastic children's picture book where they illustrate classic stories about kindness with cartoon bears. And he got it banned because its story of radical empathy is incompatible with Christianity. The bears are too kind. The specific one that and this was the fight that got me to stop being his pen pal. The specific story was about this cartoon bear that is very poor, and a raccoon breaks in his house to rob him and realizes, oh, this guy's poor, he has nothing to steal. The bear wakes up and says, oh, I'm sorry, I have nothing for you. You must be cold. Please take my robe. It's just a little thing of like, he's showing a bit of kindness. That's it. That was the one that he said was incompatible with Christianity. But he also went through, and like some of the notes of how he reached that conclusion were like, in the little, on the challenge form, in the little bit about why, he said, why would you encourage kids to forgive the thief? Would you expect a child to forgive their, I don't know if we want to say this word, it starts with R, something terrible people do to each other about relating to consent, and wrote this word in giant bold letters on the form to make it look like it was in the book. The book has nothing to do with that. When he shows the picture of the book, he says, why is this bear giving the raccoon his robe? Are you encouraging children, if someone breaks in their house, to take off their clothes? And it's like, Bruce, if that's what I specifically said to him in this email is, Bruce, if that's what comes to your mind when you read this book, I think it's you that shouldn't be near schools. He did not like that response. Yeah, and then we got in a big fight where he was talking about like, well, I just think it's unsafe for him to let this burglar in because he's not taking care of the children in his care. And I'm like, Bruce, there's no children in his care. It's the old man cartoon bear. And he says, well, the first line is my uncle. And I'm like, yeah, my uncle who lives alone, Bruce. Like his things are so ridiculous that like there's the broad things that make no sense. But once you get into specific things, it's like, Bruce, it's the third word.
We also discussed how book banners will not only not read the books that they are trying to get banned, they'll conflate and confuse two books with the same title because they don't know the difference between the two books because they haven't read either.
They don't even read the entire title. I mentioned how Are You My Mother was confused with Are You My Mother, a comic drama, and how Let's Talk About It, the Teen Guide to Sex was confused with Let's Talk About It, the Sesame Street Guide to Conflict Resolution. They don't make it past the first three words of the title before they ban a book.
BookLooks, the website that the book banners used as a hub that was in part created by Moms for Liberty, is now dead. Rest in piss. But it was never about using it or making it into a parental resource. It was always about power, and Ryan discussed this.
Yeah, they're all working from the same list, and originally it was all BookLooks, which I used to never say the name of because I want to promote it, but it's dead now. And I think that's a big example of how like fake grassroots this was, in that they, as soon as all of this book banning was in the purpose of dividing people enough that they could get power to do other things. And now that they have that power, they're like, oh, we don't need to care about books anymore. Let's shut this down. This website that just would list things that they didn't like about books, and the people banning books wouldn't even read those reports. Just if BookLooks reported on, even if BookLooks said it was okay, they never clicked it to find out. Just if BookLooks ever mentioned it, we're going to put it on this list of 300 books and go after all of them, whether they're in the library or not. And they all use the same language. They all use the same images. Like, especially when they're talking on Twitter, they all use there's exactly two grainy screenshots that they've copied and pasted from each other's tweets that they're like, look what they have in elementary schools. It's like, first of all, no, that wasn't in elementary school. That is the exact same screenshot of Let's Talk About It, or the exact same screenshot of Genderqueer that you're showing for any book you talk about, and pretending it's for a different audience than it is, and ignoring the context of what's going on there, ignoring the purpose of education that it's being used for. They all use the same images.
It wasn't just Bruce. Ryan became pen pals with everyone he could who was banning books, and he was also going to school board meetings and public board meetings.
After talking to Bruce, I decided, like, I'm going to keep this going. I want to know more. If I can just waste more of their time, I'll do that. But I started becoming pen pals with everyone. And then I also started flying out to speak at these places. Like, I live in Korea. It wasn't exactly the easiest thing to do. The first one of those that I did was I flew out to Florida. The original plan was I was going to go speak at the same school board meeting where Bruce would speak every month, and go after him and just say, actually, I think the librarians are doing a good job, just because I think that's an important thing to do, because the only people that go and speak are people who have a financial interest, and they all want books banned. So they never hear good things. So I want to do that. And we got it all set up. Then all of a sudden, like right before I left, the librarians in the city said, actually, we changed our mind. We're scared. Please don't come. Because like this guy had so much power that they were afraid that even though I was doing this on my own accord, they would be blamed. They would have consequences. So I didn't end up going to that city. I worked with the Florida Freedom to Read Project that went to a nearby city that helped me set up an event where I got to speak to the press and politicians and faith leaders and community members and everything, and encourage them to go to these meetings, because it's so much more meaningful if someone from the city goes and says, this is what this means to me. And so I got to do that. But it ended up that the librarians got all of the consequences they were fearing anyway, because nobody cares what they're doing. They just want to give them punishment. The second trip was to Kentucky, which was where that whole Let's Talk About It thing happened. But that one was a big thing too, because I was really nervous about that one, because with Florida, I was preaching to the choir. I was with a Freedom to Read organization and people who decided to go to this event, and people knew I was coming. But when I went to Kentucky, no one knew I was coming, and I just went to the city council meeting because our book had been banned there. I was really nervous. I show up. I didn't know that the city council was voting on like police salaries that day. So the entire police force was in the room. To all of the firefighters, there was something they were talking about with them too. And everyone's sitting there stone faced and serious, thinking about their future. And I'm like this dorky dude in like a cartoon shirt getting up there and being like, hi, I just flew in from Korea to say books are cool and librarians are nice. Everyone in the room, they're like stone faced. And I'm like, I am going to be beaten up in the parking lot. But then the meeting ends I quickly walk outside and I see like some police running toward me. And then for the next hour, one by one, every single person that had been in the room came up to me one by one and was like, actually, I can't really talk about this publicly, but really I'm on your side. But like, you can't say that around here. And I'm like, why don't y'all communicate? Because every one of you is afraid of the rest of them finding out. And if you talked, you'd realize that the only people who want books banned are two people who drive in from Ohio because they're paid to do it. And no one in your community wants it done. So I was able to like kind of communicate that. And the final guy that came up to me was like the sheriff of the town, and he did the exact same thing. And he's like, "This is not really book banning." It was funny. He came up to me. He's like, "Look, I know that like some people in this town can be weird, but like while you're here, if you have any trouble, just give me a call." And he reached in. "Oh, I don't have any cards. Just call 911. Like if you need anything, just call 911. They'll get me. It's a small town. Nobody's calling for anything else." Like they were all very much on my side. I also got to meet like the local activists that had gone to previous meetings and got to like also talk to them, because there was a whole thing where like I'm very much that when I speak, I always speak positively. I never say, talk about how the book banners are wrong. Even if I've done all my research and know who in the room is on my side and who isn't, I play dumb and pretend like I assume everyone's an ally. And I'll just say, I want to thank you for everything you've done for the freedom to read. And then if they haven't done anything, they know what that means. I'm not thanking them, or they feel guilty about it. But like the people that were doing it locally, I got to see videos of them, and they're more the y'all are Nazis type of people. And I'm just like, and I tell them like what my techniques are and how it works. And yeah, it was wild seeing like getting to speak to literally everyone in the community and find out that like everyone's afraid of someone else being against them.
Ryan's book was also challenged by Jennifer Pippen in Indian River County, Florida, who, if you'll recall, advocated for banning In the Night Kitchen and Unicorns Are the Worst because she claimed that they contained inappropriate nudity. Apparently, this goblin's butt is too inappropriate for children.
A prolific book challenger, Pippen heads the county's conservative parental rights group, Moms for Liberty. She knows the process well.
We need to remove these materials because they are prohibited per all the laws and statutes.
How many total number of books have you challenged yourself?
Myself here in Indian River County, 242.
Out of these, a couple of titles stand out. The literary classic In the Night Kitchen by Maurice Sendak, and a newer book, Unicorns Are the Worst, about a grumpy goblin. Both have illustrations of characters without clothes. Pippen challenged both books under a Florida education law which allows for the removal of a public school library book that depicts or describes sexual conduct. In her formal objection, Pippen said the images were pornographic, but in our interview, she walked back that claim. What's pornographic about them?
So they're not pornographic. They contain nudity.
But nudity alone is not harmful to minors. According to Florida law, the content would have to appeal to a prurient interest, be patently offensive, or without literary or artistic value. I keep going back to nudity that is harmful to children. And so a goblin's backside, on the face of it, to me, doesn't seem like it is harmful to children.
Absolutely. So again, you and I can agree on that, but some other parents may not agree.
Pippen told the district to remove the books or draw on clothing using permanent markers to cover up the nudity. So school librarians drew shorts, overalls, and shirts on the illustrations. To see these drawings, you think that genuinely could adversely affect a child who otherwise may not know what the backside of a goblin looks like or ever thought?
Sure. So if a child is possibly maybe being raped by an adult and, maybe the seeing the nudity in itself, maybe just not the backside, but seeing something nude could, be detrimental to them.
So without having read Ryan's book, Jennifer Pippen tried getting it banned. So he contacted her.
That's an interesting story. This was when our book was being banned in Indian River County, Florida. And I did the exact same very polite Facebook message and just said, "Hi, I saw you banned this book. Just wondered if you had any questions or concerns about it that I can relate. And again, haven't read it." And so she said, "But I've heard that it's anti-police and I thought it might be offensive to our school resource officer. It'll turn children to violent Antifa anarchists." And I said, "Well, our book is my wife's true story of her real experiences with a very specific group of police who worked for a dictator in order to murder children with no consequences and torture them." That's another thing. They always say that our book is anti-government. And I'm like, it's a book about fighting someone who did a violent overthrow of the government and people fighting to get their government back. it's very pro-government, whereas you are currently fighting the government that you currently live in over books. So who's more anti-government? I said, look, it's about a very specific group of police who are beating, torturing, killing children for an unelected government who is taking away people's rights. I think if I were your school resource officer, I would be more offended that you couldn't tell the difference. And there's like the long pause, the long little three dots, and then she's like, "Oh, I didn't know it was a true story. So I'll tell you what, I'll retract my challenge and instead make it recommended reading in every library in the city." And I'm like, wait, ma'am, you still didn't read the book. You can't just go from one extreme to the other. Like, I agree with you. Great, have people read it, but don't make sweeping generalizations about how the law should force people to read or not read books that you haven't read. And don't do that anyway. Let them make their own freaking decisions. But then I've always told the story about how I changed her mind, and I later found out that she just got it removed anyway, but called it weeding. So it was removed forever. So she just like, I don't want him to call me out, so we'll just have it weeded permanently. No one can ever read it.
Weeding is a cute little thing that book banners like to make happen, where a book is weeded. They'll say, well, it's weeded, it's not banned. It's not banned, we just didn't have enough checkouts, so now we've weeded it. We've gotten rid of the book that nobody wants. It got weeded for non-use. No, it got weeded because y'all put it on a hidden shelf, like they're doing in Pasco County, Florida right now, and then nobody knows it's there, leading to less checkouts, which means you're able to weed it. That is the plan. This has happened in libraries across the US with LGBTQI plus books. It's a very sneaky tactic. You guys are sneaky, but you're not intelligent. Talking to you, Jennifer Pippen. Book banning looks similar and follows similar trends everywhere. I have another video on this coming soon where I talk to people across the world where in their country books have been censored and you see patterns. Ryan mentions this as well.
The way they ban those children's books, like one of the in our newest book, No Rules Tonight, which is like a follow-up to Ban Book Club, we talk about how in Korea, Brown Bear, What Do You See was like banned in Korea, and it turned out it was because they had confused Bill Martin with Bill Martin Jr. One makes children's books and the other writes political books, and they just didn't know the difference. And then decades later, the exact same thing happened in Texas, where they made the exact same mistake as the dictators. Not much research.
The new trend that we will likely see bleed into other countries is calling anything that they don't like woke. Bruce Friedman and my resident county book banner, Julie Gebhard's, they both do this often.
While we're giving an example, another one of my favorites from Bruce's documents is a Star Wars book. I forgot the name of which one, but it got banned because there's this one like young girl Jedi that everybody calls Teeny to make fun of her. Her Jedi trainer calls her Teeny. She says, "Please don't call me that." And he says, "I respect your preferences." And they got it banned because "I respect your preferences" is too woke. He should be forced to call this Jedi in training, this Padawan, Teeny, an insulting nickname because it's woke to respect the child's preferences. What if they respect nickname preferences and they start respecting other preferences about other stuff we don't want to talk about in books?
Ryan reveals some juicy info that he infiltrated a no left turn in education group, and this was hilarious. This is the petty that I aspire to be.
You know, besides just like my public facing stuff, I also have my little like secret underground things that I do to mess with them. I don't know, they might finally learn about this now that I'm saying this here. I've posted about it on forums that I know they're not on. So there was a while ago where No Left Turn in Education had a Facebook group where they would discuss all the books they wanted to ban and all the bigotry they had. Since Facebook is public, their friends and family members could see that, and I guess they were being judged for their bigotry. So they wanted a place where they couldn't be judged. So they moved to this new like right-leaning social network built on anonymity, where anyone could post anything and you'd never find out their name. And so they like made a little secret link for their members to join. So I joined, and since it's anonymous, they had no way of knowing it was me. And eventually I think they figured out that someone was in there, but since it's all anonymous, they didn't know like which person to ban because it gives you a different name every time you post. And so they were in there just talking about like victories of things they got banned and things they wanted to ban. And I just started, I didn't get in argumentative. I didn't lie and say I was someone else, but I would just post articles about them in unflattering lights and be like, "What's the story of this?" Or like, "Hey, have you guys seen this?" And they would be tricked into reading things that they didn't want to read about like sex scandals with people who run their organization or their organization being labeled a hate group, all of these things that they didn't want to read. And all of a sudden, everyone that was in there stopped posting. And it started being only my posts. It took like 6 months, but now no one has posted there in a year because the only posts are me being like, "Hey, y'all seen this?" Like it was probably like a couple of people who were like heading up these organizations, and then people they'd invited to like try and propaganda them into believing siding with them. And I just made everyone that like wasn't totally on board be like, is this really what I want to be associated with? And it's dead now. One of my proudest achievements is killing that forum.
I asked if he thought that the censorship advocates were shifting, and if so, how? What new trends are we seeing in their behavior, especially after BookLooks was taken down, the website that they used to lay out, like, here's all of the material in this book that we don't like?
They're not stopping, they're shifting, but I think a lot of it is that they've gotten what they wanted. They didn't really want to ban books. They were being funded by people who have a financial interest in private schools. So making public schools look dangerous, dividing people, making people angry at another so that they vote a certain way. The people funding those particular parts got what they wanted. But book banning is always a political tool used for something, and there's always someone that wants it done for something. So these people are still going. Now the laws are making it easier for them to do and more difficult for them to fight. But there are people that are fighting. There's amazing organizations. I was so excited. One of the greatest things I've ever seen on the internet. Did you see the video of Dan Kleinman from Safe Libraries being served? So Dan Kleinman is this guy who runs a thing called Safe Libraries, where he just picks librarians he doesn't like and just tries to make their life miserable through like stalking and threats, and like he'll like follow people around the country, he'll dox them. There's people that he's been trying to get fired for years and years, where every time they post something, he like tags all of their employers and is like gleefully misinterpreting things they said to mean something else and trying to get them fired. And he's just always showing up at school board meetings and calling librarians the most horrible names. Very dangerous. He went after me once because the first time I was attending the American Library Association annual conference, he was posting very vague threats about like, I'll be there and they'll finally learn, and like things like that like consequences are coming or karma's coming or something like that. This was in Washington DC, so I just said like, at FBI, you're like 2 blocks away, maybe keep an eye on this. And so he was posting about how like, how dare you tag the FBI when your book is about punching cops? And I'm like, again, have you read it? What happened recently is that one of the librarians he has been hunting and stalking and like horrible stuff, does not even live in the same city as him, but he shows up at events she's at. So there was a recent school board meeting where Dan Kleinman got up and did his thing, and then a local community member got up after him. You've been served. And he turned around and handed Dan the papers.
Dan Kleinman, I'm from Safe Libraries.
What was that?
Safe Libraries, an organization out of Chatham, New Jersey. Martha Hickson has tweeted that she will be appearing here with a librarian named Amanda Jones and will be speaking here during the executive session. I just want to let you know that the American Library Association has allowed these two people, Martha Hickson and Amanda Jones, to represent librarians nationwide on the issue of children reading, having access to inappropriate books in schools. We know in New Jersey there's a law 2C 34-3 about obscenity. Somehow you people all approved that book with the obscenity in it, and I filed an ethics complaint against you for having done that, as you know.
Sir, I'm going to interrupt you, and we're holding your time, so I'm not on your time. But I want to caution you that ethics matters are confidential. I believe that the School Ethics Commission advised you of that. So ethics matters are confidential. We're going to honor your right to speak, but I want to caution you in that regard. I also want to caution you that any statements which might be considered defamatory, individuals have individual rights. So I'm just addressing your last comment, and
right.
We're going to start the clock where we left off.
All right. So since Martha has said she's going to have this meeting here, I would just ask that you keep the camera on during the executive session and perhaps trained on the audience or wherever she is. If you don't follow this policy, then the Martha meeting is going to be illegal on the school grounds. I just want to make sure that you're following the policy here, even if some people show up and decide to put on a meeting during your meeting, if they haven't previously come to you and gotten the proper permission under 7510, or I'll have to take action accordingly. Thank you very much.
I'll make this brief. I have been coming to these board meetings for about 3 years now, maybe more. Thank you, Mr. Farbanish and Mr. Mielek, for your service to the community. And speaking of service, Mr. Kleiman, you've been served.
Sir. Comments have to be directed to the president.
Mr. Kleiman will be served. Thank you.
What the fuck was that?
No way.
So there are people that are standing up, and there are people that are fighting back. There are people that are getting books back on shelves, but they are facing a lot of punishment and they are facing a lot of consequences because now we're in a government that is not on the side of the people who want the freedom to read. So it's getting scarier, but there are people who are fighting back.
We talked about the possibility of Ryan's other book, No Rules Tonight, also facing challenges and bans.
Bruce does label me as P&P, which is a term he uses for problematic and prolific. But it's weird. None of my, No Rules Tonight is a follow to Banned Book Club. Everything he dislikes about Banned Book Club is in it, plus other things that he doesn't like. But no one has come after that book yet, and I think it's because I annoy the hell out of them. It's not about protecting children from books. It's about how they can do the most damage, and they know that if they come after my book, I'm going to be incredibly annoying. I might show up. I might get a secret account in their forums. I might email them. I might bother them on Facebook Messenger. So it's been a while since Banned Book Club has been targeted, even in places that have these long lists. So I think that I've become annoying enough that they're trying to avoid me. Again, proving they don't care about what's in the book because they're not going after anymore. Only because I bother them. All the stupid things they say, I'll go on podcasts and social media and talk about it. Like when in South Carolina, Concerned Citizens for Education had my book on a list of books that they said will lower property values if they're allowed in the library. Yeah, they said when someone says like, do you fear for your children? The guy's like, oh, I don't have children, but I don't want my property values being lowered by the schools having such a bad reputation for all this porn. In Texas, where our book was banned, not just Banned Book Club, but also my book Occulted, that's about my friend who grew up in a UFO death cult, used banned books to escape. Both of them were on his list, and he said, these books don't belong in the library. They belong at Pokey's Planet, a well-known purveyor of sex toys, which is part of his speech. And I'm like, number one, that's weird. Number two, you really had that name like right at the tip of your tongue, didn't you? You didn't say a sex toy store. You're like, you knew the one. Like, you've been spending a lot of time at Pokey's Planet there, sir.
And we discussed, as I love to do, how absolutely fucking stupid book banners are. I've been told don't call them that, but I still hold firm that they are in fact stupid. The things that they say, the things that they do, they are stupid.
Everything that they say that reaches people is just copied and pasted from the same list they're all working from. Whenever they try to go off script and say something themselves, it's always the dumbest thing you've ever heard in your life. And that's why I read Bruce's documents. That's why I read these interviews with them, because like you find the dumb things that show like they don't know what they're doing. It's just nonsense people, and you get to just have fun with their nonsense.
But even if they are stupid, which I believe that they are unfortunately very effective at spreading their stupidity and their bigotry.
It's fun to laugh at them, but it really is dangerous what they're doing, because they really are hurting a lot of people. I mean, that's kind of why I work so hard at finding ways to mock them, to show that they can be defeated. They're not doing anything just. They're not fighting for anything they believe in.
Ryan brought up something that really bothers me from people who write, but authors even, who have not had a book challenged as of yet.
There's so many people that whenever I talk about my book being banned, or Banned Book Week happens, there's always all these authors that say, man, I hope my book gets banned. I want to sell a lot of copies. It's messed up because like that used to be the thing. That used to be what like the reputation was. And because there have been a few cases, like when Mouse got banned, it went through the roof. But that was a specific thing where it's a book people had nostalgia for, had meaning to them, and it hit a news cycle. But what's happening now is someone like Bruce will come with a list of 200 books every month, and these books are being removed immediately, and a lot of times the authors don't even know it. Every single time I've had a meeting or a conversation with someone, they've said like, well, as an ally, like my book's never been banned, but as an ally, and then someone you'll hear typing, and someone will be like, your book has been banned in 6 counties. I'm like, wait, what? Like the authors don't even know about this.
And what he's saying is true. Much to my horror, I was the one to reveal this to an author recently, that their book had been challenged by Bruce Friedman in Clay County, Florida. A perfectly age-appropriate young adult book, and they found out that their book had been challenged by Bruce because of me asking to collab with them, I was mortified by this. So what Ryan is saying is true. It is not glorious to have a book challenged and banned. Many people don't even know where or when their book is being censored, or if it is being censored at all. And for the book in particular that I reached out to the author about, and they didn't know that their book had been challenged by Bruce as of yet, so my message was the way that they found out. That book in particular, there's very important representation in that book that is seen in only, I believe, 2 young adult books. So that book being banned means that in that library system in Clay County, Florida, if it had been successfully banned, you are either removing all or 50% of the representation of that particular disability. Imagine being that author and finding out that your goal of representing something for a particular age group who needs to see themselves reflected in a book, that goal that you had is not coming to fruition, all because somebody labeled you inappropriate. That's not a badge of honor. It is hurtful. It is cruel. It might have previously been seen as a joke or not taken seriously, but what we're dealing with right now, it is not cute. It is not funny. It is dangerous. It is disheartening. It does not benefit anybody, the authors, the readers, to have a book challenged and or banned. And it doesn't just stop at your books. It extends to people afterwards. After they come for the books, they come for people. And Ryan talks about this.
Until I wrote Banned Book Club, my only experience with book banning was of my own, where I did I did a single comic for my school newspaper, my middle school newspaper. I was 12 or 13 years old, and it was about a friendly bug who liked to have adventures. It was called Wendell the Wasp. And when I got the newspaper, I found out that my comic had been redrawn by someone else with a new title because the principal thought that the name Wendell the Wasp was offensive to white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. And I'm like, sir, I'm 12 years old. I do not know what any of those words mean. I made a comic about a bug. And so to me, that was like, it was something dumb. And like, I heard stories about other places where there would be a mom who complains and nobody listens to her. So it was a joke. But what's happening now is when books are being banned, not only are they disappearing by hundreds, they're not getting any attention, but like, we don't know, but the librarians that are fighting to get these books in people's hands, they definitely know because they're risking their safety, they're risking their careers, they're being threatened with felonies. They have people calling them up and giving them death threats and calling them horrible names, accusing them of crimes. And there are people suffering with my book as a weapon. And so that's not something I can be excited about. And I'll admit, like I have, before I truly understand what was going on, I would say the same thing. Like, man, I hope my book gets banned because I didn't understand what was happening. And it's really, really dangerous. And like, that's why I like to make fun of them. But I also like to be like, the reason I'm making fun of them is so you understand these are dangerous people who don't understand the danger they're presenting. Beyond the librarians and teachers that are suffering, I have friends that have been fired. I have friends that have been forced out of careers. The other dangerous thing is that like kids don't know what's happening. They're just going to a library and not seeing themselves on the shelf. Like I do book talks in libraries over Zoom, like 6 times a week. And I talk to all these libraries and I've been doing it for over a year. All of a sudden, I had never thought to ask, but the librarian was like, wait, let me just pause for a second. Can I ask a question? She turned to her kids and said, how many of you knew any of this was happening? And no hands went up. And she's like, do y'all know what I've been doing every day so you can read these books? It's scary. Like we actually, Hyunsuk and I got to join a couple of banned book clubs that were reading Banned Book Club. Been in hundreds of banned book clubs reading Banned Book Club, but there were ones that specifically we had to keep secret because if the school they were in knew what they were doing, they would have been fired. The class would have been canceled. That's what's happening in America right now, that people are risking their careers to read books, and it's not giving any benefit to anyone except for the people who are funding this so that they can make money off of investing in private schools and make money by getting people to vote for them, by making things seem scary that only they can solve. Every politician wants to create some danger that only they can save you from. That's what happened in Korea. That's where they were killing students so that they could say, oh, there was an invasion from North Korea. Only I can save you. And in all of these cases, it starts with the books and it goes to the people. And we're seeing that in America right now. All the types of people they're banning books about now, they're going after those people now with unjust laws, with illegal deportations, with illegal arrests, violence. And it's not going to get better until people learn enough that everyone kind of comes together and stands against it.
Talking about how this relates to his next book, Good Old-Fashioned Korean Spirit, he says this.
We have another book coming out this October called Good Old-Fashioned Korean Spirit, where we get into more of what followed in Korea, where really nothing changed until everyone kind of realized they were in it together. What happened was there was this one activist, because people just thought, oh, these are just teenagers and young people protesting. They're just troublemakers. But then there was one protester at a demonstration who was killed when a cop hit him in the head with a tear gas canister, and someone took a picture as he was falling. And that picture like kind of got shared and went viral before the internet. And everyone kind of was like, oh, these kids are actually standing for something they believe in, something that means something to us. And then other people started to be like, we need to be involved in this too. There was this thing called the necktie revolution, where salarymen at work would have their lunch break, take off their necktie, tie it around their head like a rainbow bandana, and go join the protest and give support for 45 minutes and be like, I gotta get back to work. And that was enough to have people look at the news and be like, oh, it's not just young people. There's adults doing this too. Maybe we should join in. And it's when everyone came together and said, this isn't right. We need to do something. And that all came from reading things they weren't supposed to see, watching things they weren't supposed to see, learning the truth, that everyone came together and stood against it. And I guess a lot of places in the world are just waiting for that moment.
Discussing the irony of the things in the book being done by the people who are trying to now ban the book, Ryan Estrada had this to say.
When we'd be like, they're quoting our book, but they don't know they're quoting our book because they didn't read our book, even though what they're saying is about our book. It's so weird. And just they're following the exact line. Like, our book, we did not know that our book was going to be relevant. I thought we were right. I was writing it because I'm like, I learned some cool things about my wife. Like, I didn't know I was writing about society. I didn't know I was writing about the future. I was writing about history. I was writing about, like, y'all would not believe how cool my wife was. I didn't know all this. As I'm writing the book, I actually had to edit out some lines because, like, I would write a line of a villain speaking. The next day, the president of the United States would say the exact same thing. And I'm like, people are going to think that's a reference. And then by the time our book got published because I had posted on Twitter about what I'd learned about my wife, and we were offered a book deal because at first Spike at Iron Circus Comic thought I was talking about North Korea. And when she was South Korea, she was amazed at the idea that a democracy had only been like a few decades away from state book banning, because that wasn't happening in America. And it was just before the book came out that we started getting state banned books. And then our book became one of them. And it's like, we really did not expect this. And there's so much I want to say to the book banners, but I already wrote it in our books and they won't read them. And they're trying to make sure no one else will read them.
Which brought up an interesting point, because when we say Korean dictatorship, people here in the US often don't know about what happened in South Korea during theirs and how important it is to learn this, and the importance of really just learning about each other and each country's complex histories, which is why I'm doing another video about book banning globally.
Yeah, and that confusion kind of shows so much about history, because what people don't realize is that after the Korean War, North Korea and South Korea were in the exact same place. They were separated. They had to build their governments from scratch, and they both had people who wanted to be dictators. And South stood up and stopped it. North couldn't, and you see how much different the two countries become. So that's why it's really important to stand up. We never planned on making any sequels to these books, but like they kept being so relevant that I have like, oh, I should have included all of these and stuff. That's why like good old-fashioned Korean spirit isn't even necessarily about the politics, about all these kids like having a weekend on an old farm, but it's about how like they're all, because of the situation they're in, no one trusts one another. Whether there's like an American girl, there's the American adoptee who's come back to Korea, there's these grandmas and the young people who like the kids think the grandmas are going to turn them in if they find out. The old people think that the kids are troublemakers. And then all of a sudden they realize that like, wait a minute, the grandmas had their own banned book club exactly in this spot because during the Japanese occupation, they were banned from reading the Korean language. So of course they understand what's happening. The girl who grew up in America, the people who grew up in Korea, like we all have experiences that we can all relate to one another. And that's why stories are so important. Just not only are stories important because they help us understand ourselves. When you read a book that you can relate to and realize you're not alone, there's so many people that need that. But also it's important to read books about people who are nothing like you, because you're able to see that people who you think you completely agree with are coming from the same angle, who they have lives just like you. They're so similar to you that if we come together and figure out what it is we really need out of life, we can come together and work together to fight it. But unfortunately, there are people who just don't want that communication, who don't want people to understand one another, who don't want people to come together. And that's when they ban the books. And as I said before, like every single one of these movements has their magic word that they use. There was degenerate, there was communist, there was pornographic, there was satanic. But if you look at the books, and we both saw that looking through Bruce's form, it's not about any of those words they said. It's about, these are people we don't want to have a voice. These are people we don't want to hear from. It's weird that he'll say in public that it's all pornography, and then everything he posts is public, Bruce. Bruce, we know why you're banning the books, because people are too kind, because people care about each other, because people are not like you.
He discusses how he never tries to make a book about politics, but as we know, the personal is political. And because the personal is political, we have a duty to each other to do the right thing.
We never want to make a book about politics. In our books, politics are what's interrupting the story. These kids are just trying to have a weekend away. They're trying to get good grades. They're trying to impress a boy. They're trying to say I love you to a girl. They're trying to not get kicked out of a club, like not to make their grandma mad. But these things that come into their life are what's interrupting it and making it difficult. And so we try to make it so it can relate to anyone, that everyone has things like that in their life where there's something that they know is wrong, that maybe other people ignore, that maybe other people realize is a problem, but think it's too dangerous to stand up for it. And we just want to show, if you really believe in something, you can do something about it. And you don't, sometimes it's dangerous. You don't always have to risk your life. Like, what I think is everyone needs to do whatever little bit of specialty, or whatever bit of expertise, whatever bit of passion or opportunity you have to make a little bit of difference. Everyone can do that. Part of what I do is I do all of these Zooms, I do all this stuff online, because my co-writers, whether I'm working with Hyunsuk, my wife, or with Occulted, I worked with my friend Amy Rose. These are their stories. These are stories that have a lot of trauma attached, involve their secrets, and that's with a lot of the books that are being banned. Is these authors. These are things that are tied to their identity. And so to talk to someone who so completely disrespects that and disrespects who they are is traumatic and painful. Whereas I'm the co-author. It's not my story. I'll get in and mix it up with Bruce. I'll annoy the hell out of Bruce. I'll wake up at 6 a.m. and do Zoom 6 days a week to libraries and talk about how important it is to stand up for this. And so that's something that I can do.
I talked to him about attending library board meetings specifically, as in your local county public library, not like public school libraries, not just schools, not just school board meetings, because our public libraries are also under attack. And when I had recorded this, I had just taken my kids to their public library meeting. And here's what he said about going to public library meetings.
If you're in a community, it's very important for you to go and show up at a school board meeting, show up at a library board meeting, show up at a city council meeting, and just, even if you don't know of anything happening, even if you haven't heard about books being banned in your community, if you think it can't happen in your community, just show up and just, if they've heard one person say, I think the library is great, I think librarians are doing a good job, if someone comes in later and says, I think that these books should be banned, they're going to remember that someone has spoken out. And that's like your little superpower, is just being a member of that community. I can fly in from Korea and they'll listen to me, but it doesn't mean much. I have a vested interest. It's my book. I'm an outsider. But you have this little superpower being like, hey, I paid for this library. I visit this library. This is what I think. So find your little superpower to do something that helps fix the world. I went to one library board meeting in my hometown. I was referred to as the public because I was the only member of the public there. So they just kept calling me the public like it was my name, because I represented the public. What you say goes on record. They have to write it down. They have to put it in the records. So get in there and say it as much as possible, because they need to hear it. You may think it will never happen in your town, but because your community isn't like that doesn't mean there isn't one person that's come in to do it. Because the community, every time my book is banned, people are like, oh, there, of course. And I'm like, no, not of course, because I've been there. I talked to the people. They don't want it. Someone had to come from outside. So even in places where I have friends that work at libraries that are in the bluest places in the world, that everyone's like, a book would never be banned there. They tell me about the difficulties they have that they don't talk about because they don't want to give it breath. They don't want to give it attention. They just silently fight against it. So write a letter to the editor of your newspaper. Just say, speak up. Remember what I said about if any of those people communicated in that meeting in Kentucky. If you just put out into the world that you as a community member aren't for book banning, other people will be like, oh, am I not alone in this? Am I allowed to say this? Is it cool?
And his final advice to people fighting book censorship is this:
speak up, stand up for what you believe in, celebrate the books you love, talk about the books you love, use your library, even just making sure you have a library card, walking into the library, using that library card gives the library the budget they need to get these books and stand up for these books. If you check out the banned books, then when someone tries to ban it, they can say, look how many people have used it. It's useful in our community. I hope you check out Banned Book Club, No Rules Tonight. Good Old-Fashioned Korean Spirit comes out in October. Yeah, I hope people check those out, enjoy them, and, just read any. I don't care if it's mine. Just read a book. Force the weirdos in your life that don't read books to read a book. Yeah. Just peer pressure people into reading books.
I can't thank Ryan enough for doing this. I hope you all enjoyed this interview setup and that you took something away from this. Please fight book censorship in your local communities, even if you are doing so preemptively. Even if it hasn't happened in your area yet, it likely is going to. Just because it hasn't hit your city or your county yet doesn't mean that you are immune. Join us in ensuring that we preserve the books and the freedom to read and read freely and choose what we read on an individual basis. Where you preserve books and stories, you preserve people. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, leave a middle finger for Bruce Friedman. Get a job, buddy. Thank you again to Ryan. Thanks for everybody in the comments, and keep fighting against book censorship. Bye. And before I go out to say thank you for being a friend, Therapyville's patrons, and those are Alexander, Andy, Ashley 8, Astra, Beck, Call Me Kodiak, Choco's Homesick for Taiwan, DJ Rocktopus, Ellie, Emerald Dodd, Eric, Jade L, John E, Jory, Julie D, K, Kai Brecker has not read Six of Crows, Kaleno K, Kelly K, Quinn, Lady Kittybug, Lady Chips, Lemon Jelly, Lex, Other Lex, Lily, Lisa L, Matta Raptor, Max B, Megwin Rose, Melissa, Minby, Mixer Boneless, Not So Secretly a Skeleton, Peggy Luhu, Piloting SRN, Rain, Reese, SJ, Samar, Scarlet, Spoopy, Steph B, Super SMA Girl Lily, 3 Raccoons in a Trench Coat, Tori, Urchin Audrey, White Raven 13, and Zorvictia. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend. And a huge thank you to my potato starch Marxists, Adrian, Aaron, Alejandra, Ali Oxenfree, Althea, Amanda D, Angelica, Artie the Ninth, Ava, Barry B, Beck Lowe, Binging for Soup, Blue Moon Syrup, Bookish by Jenna, Bookish Rabbit, Bree, Bridget 108, Kate, Caitlin, Carlin, Carly, Casper, Kate W, Kath Cole, Colleen, Corwin, Cosmic Frog, Courtney, Darius, Danielle, Danita, Darren, Desiree Michelle, Dilf Enthusiast, Dorothea Supports Public Education, Draco-chan, Drive-By Thinker, Ebby, Emily A, Emma, Aaron with 2 E's, Erica May, Aaron Starlight, Gadarn, Hannah C, Helen P, Harassing, JM Tennant, Jackalope Max, Jay is on Olympus, Jelly V, Jen Michelle, Genderqueer, Jenny G, Jessie Ives, Jessa Sue, Jill, Jojo Bookish, Juicy Wizard, who I just met in person at BookNet Fest, and I was so excited. Caitlin M, Catherine, Katie, Katrina, Kayla, Kaylee, Kayala, Kendra, KMTV, Kayana, Laughing Cat Dog, Laura is Angry, Lauren G, Lazarus Ray, Lindsay M, LP, Lou Siri, Lustful Octopus, Martin, Macy Jane, Maddie, Madison, Man-Eating Plant, Megan, Malara, May, Mima Who, Morgan P, Myth Lesbian, Nicole G, Oxford, supporter, same, Paige P, Penelope, Penny Chilling, Foxglove, Pick a God and Pray, Plague Carrier, Pandemonium, Queen Cereal, Rachel B, Rebecca R, Ren, Flynn, Rhea, Ronnie, Rosie Thorns, Sikoria, Sadie, Saintbringer, Sakia Lume, Sarah H, Sarah the Bear, Shamed, Shannon, Sheen Onion, Sean, Sophie, Talia, That One Cute Chick, This Is Not a Trap, Tiana, Too Thick to Work to Get Today, Triple M, Tito Phoenix, Unicorn Jenny. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend.